The first game of the weekend was France v Scotland, and it finished 27-10 in favour of France. So France got a win.
France got a win. France were very good. They the last 10 minutes had 3 tries. Up until then, it had been a tight affair.
Tight-ish. France
but generally speaking, it wasn't just like one team running a roughshod over the other. France were better.
Yeah.
But beneficiaries of quick starts, a quick start of the first half and a quick start in the second, and Scotland really just couldn't play themselves into the game.
Yeah, it was a very, very disjointed looking Scotland that it was just like a hodgepodge of some of the parts that were left over from Edinburgh and Glasgow, and it didn't really gel at all. Much as I liked players like Johnson the week before against Ireland, I thought he stepped up and played pretty well. He was kind of all over the place in the midfield next to Horn, who didn't have a great game by his standards as well at 10. Very annoying for Gregor Townsend to be missing Finn for it, obviously, because he's such a fulcrum for them. But just like the whole backline just failed to break anything down or create anything really. And then the few times there was space, their execution let them down, and they kind of it just seemed like they didn't know quite how to finish off anything that they did create. Yeah. Whereas they actually, like, in terms of getting bullied, which was the fear in France, they actually didn't really get that bullied in close quarters. They just couldn't actually match France's creativity.
I definitely thought there were a lot of positives to take from the game. Like a good few of them. I thought the pack, first of all, did stand up. They were competent, pretty much. Going toe-to-toe with the French pack pretty much for the whole game. I thought Gilchrist was very good again, as just a consistent team.
He's a very good performer.
He's a very good performer. I thought Richie at 7 was really very good. He was one of the few really trying to make plays on the ball in defence, and he got a few and slowed up French ball. He was a nuisance, and he acquitted himself very nicely. Yeah. And McAnally, I thought, put himself around as well. Disappointing week.
The line-out didn't function that well. That'll be a problem for them.
And that's
with McAnally as well.
Consistent. That's still consistently a bugbear of theirs, for sure. And when the replacement props came on as well, there wasn't
anything there. Yeah, it's just front foot ball every scrum for France, which is France by the other token were actually just very impressive. It was nice to see just a little sprinkling of consistency in terms of the fact that there were so many Toulouse heads, particularly in the back line. And just to make the link more tangible, that everyone kind of knew what wavelength they should be on, and even with the centres being a bit direct as they are, that selection, they still produced some good moments in that structure. Having the axis of Ramos and Ntamack being both first receivers just allowed them to get out wide sooner. And I actually thought Ficou and Bastareaud both had pretty decent games.
Totally. It was from France's perspective. It was a lot closer to what I had me optimistic about the team in advance of the tournament. In the sense that there was this Toulouse through line that was running through the team, which helps fix a lot of the disjointed issues that they've been suffering from all of this chopping and changing that's been going on. Yeah. That when faced with adversity, they actually do have something to fall back on. They do know each other. They do know how they want to play the game. Yeah. And just picking a bunch of, like, Felix Lambie getting in there was a no-brainer, but now that he's in there, I can't, and himself and Etoria and actually to his credit, Wenceslas Larry coming back into the team as well.
Play very well.
But they actually are a lot more fit, a lot young fit guys in the team, so they're less likely to gas out. And because they have that Toulouse through line running through the team, they do have their patterns and memories and style and identity to fall back on when things don't go their way. And it was their attacking shape that won them the game. They managed to keep it up. They had shown signs of cool innovation against Wales that sort of pittered out into nothingness in the second half. Yeah. But in this game, it was very free flowing. It was done at a very high pace with a lot of accuracy. And that I think was the second try just on half time with the Bastareaud chip and chase. Uche's try. That's some try.
Excellent. It's checkers from Bastareaud as well. Sweeping left foot chip. Excellent.
Beautiful. And then Ficou running off him, and it was absolute jouet, pure class French play. Very, very difficult to defend. Yeah. And that's like that's in the arsenal. It's like, for all of the complaints that have come, and I'm sure will come in weeks and months to come about this French outfit, that's still there. They still have Just a touch of class and some real ballers that you can get into the team. And Ntamack at 10, really, I was skeptical, but he was very, very good.
He was really good. As was Dupont at 9, like just excellent. They absolutely bossed it. And Scotland's a halfback pairing were kind of stuttering and struggling to find their way into the game while this was going on. And I didn't see the two boys put a foot wrong, to be honest, for pretty much the whole game. They were dictating the pace and keeping it very, very high tempo, but having the fitness to match that. Few little weak links in there. There's still Van Mahino hanging around, who's in the second row, and for the life of me, I don't know what he does for that team at all, other than make them significantly worse as far as work rate and stamina, because he doesn't get through enough work. And then by the second half, he's coming up with some horror plays. There was for one of the, I'm pretty sure for the try, actually, Scotland try, it was his man who was missing, and Baster ended up yelling at him as Scotland went through for, albeit a consolation score. But some of his stats are horrendous this tournament, and he's just seemingly just a big guy in the midst of it all.
No, I don't necessarily disagree. It's sort of a bizarre one that he's the Claremont man, other than Pinot, who's still hanging around. But you would think that an easy enough personnel switch would be to put a Turia into that lock. Then all of a sudden you have very dynamic locks and you have room for another back rower.
Yeah, like Cameron or someone who's also playing well.
That's to come, but for the time being, a lot of positives from
them. I certainly can't fault this performance anywhere near as much as the previous ones. This was more of along the lines of what we want to see from France, really.
100%,
and it's a few key changes in key positions, and it worked. That being said, I just don't know. It could all change before the next round. But the fact that they won, means that more likely do they stick with it.
But that's the point. Is that it's just 1 week.
Yeah.
And while there is a lot of positivity in terms of actually building layers on top of it, you have to be thinking, like, what's going to happen if things go wrong for Ntamack at 10? If his confidence breaks, if he has a bad week, is he just going to be wrenched out of the team like Lopez was? Like, going forward, Dupont and Ntamack, it looks exciting as a halfback pairing, but they're going to come and face top teams and face big challenges, and they're going to struggle some days, possibly even the next round against Ireland. So I would like to see them draft. I think the two obvious ones, too mature, like not necessarily to start, but to get into the squad and possibly be benchmen. I'd like to see them draft in Machino at 9 and Lopez at 10. To give them real options, like Bellew on the bench at the weekend isn't a real option.
Yeah, and he didn't come on till very late in the game as well, when it was already over, because he can't
probably not test level.
Yeah,
and but in Lopez you have a very different player from Ntamack, and probably one that less suits the style that would most suit this French team now, which is why it does make some sense, given that it worked, that Ntamack comes in and plays 10, but you would like to see them have that option of those mature guys to come in
with a kicking game off the bench and close things out.
Just get used to being around. That's how you build teams, is getting them in the squad and getting them used to it, and then your 32-man World Cup squad can start to take some shape, which it still hasn't, to be honest, in spite of this. In spite of this, what was a very, very positive performance. And what I will say is, like, I did think there's a lot of people really digging into Scotland. I did think it was a high enough standard. I thought up front it was high standard. I thought defensively it was high standard. I thought everything that France did that broke Scotland down, all the French tries were really classy, wonderful pieces of play. Even the disallowed tries, all the same.
There were many of them as well.
Ntamack little chip that was just on a sixpence. It was actually like a Finn Russell play. It was a perfect little left-footed chip in behind the Scottish defence. It was a shame it was called back for a knock on. But there was some wildly good rugby being played in there, and from Scotland's perspective, there are questions. Like, it's easy to write off, and to be honest with you, it could even be fair to write off as this isn't a country with the biggest player pool in the world, and they have an injury crisis right now.
It's true,
and things could still come up Millhouse for them in World Cup time or next year, or you could get everybody back fit. You could get Hamish Watson in good form and Finn Russell in good form.
True.
But to be honest with you now, like, there's bigger questions starting to be asked about what's gone on in this Scottish team. I mean, when we started this podcast back, ahead of the 2017 Six Nations, we were talking up Scotland, and this was Vern Cotter's Scotland as one of the most promising, teams,
upcoming teams on the rise.
And they went and they beat Ireland that year. They went and they beat Wales that year. both in Murrayfield. They've gone on that. I think that November they gave the All Blacks a real scare.
Yeah.
I think they beat Australia that summer. Then last year didn't really kick on, didn't happen for them in the Six Nations, and now they seem, since Townsend's come in, they seem to be just stuttering a little bit. It's very important that what's going on in Edinburgh is helps them in the sense that there is a foundational thing they can build on. They can have a solid scrum and a solid line-out drive and a solid pack, a great turnover game, and also have that
little X-factor attack dynamism that they need, which they didn't have that at all at the weekend. It was very, very clunky little kind of offensive sets that didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, and listen, I was calling for Peter Horne at 10 over Hastings, which was just, I think, so I understand the call, but it was proven just 100% wrong.
Yeah.
In the sense that Hastings came on and really grabbed his opportunity. He looked much, much better at 10, and Horne obviously just was looking very much not a 10 for the whole game.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because I like Horne a lot as a player, and it was just it wasn't good. But it wasn't only that, because then Johnston as well felt like he was playing deep in that second receiver role, which isn't how he plays the game at all, and he was just found behind the gain line being chopped a few times. The passing game was never right. They weren't linking up with the wide men, and it was just that couple that with a few. Seymour took a bit of a knock, and then I thought he was actually a little bit off for a period of play after that. But also on the other wing, Maitland is in shocking form, really. Like, he's just not playing well at all and not making plays that you would expect from a Sarries winger, but he's not, and he was at fault for one of the tries in against Ireland the 2 weeks previous, and he's just not really there. Whereas Darcy Graham is, I would like to see him get more minutes because he's an exciting player who's in form this year. But the back line as a whole, well, you've just the life's been sucked out of it. Sure, like we watched it live on BBC because we had the RT one covered, and it was just like looking at the BBC coverage. They were interviewing Finn Russell pre kickoff, and Stewie Hogg was in studio doing the call, and it's just like, well, that's not really Scotland. We know
there's no question.
You're talking Horne to Johnston instead of Finn Russell to Stewie Hogg as your offensive axis. Yeah, that's not as good. Yeah, and it wasn't.
No Hugh Jones either.
Yeah.
They haven't like, it was a tough game for them, and they don't get me wrong, as I've said, they do have positives to take from it. There was a lot of good in what their pack are able to do, and they can feel comfortable knowing that with Edinburgh going so well, that they're developing into a more rounded side, which they can be happy with. But in terms of the identity of the team, one of the things that Gregor Townsend said when he took over was that he wanted Scotland to be the side that played the fastest rugby in the world.
Yes.
And he says, if nothing else, that's what we're going to do. We're going to just be quicker. We're just going to play the fastest rugby in the world. Teams are going to have to deal with that and shut that down. And one of the points that's getting consistently made online by Scottish fans is, can you play that kind of a game with Greg Laidlaw at scrum half? It's fundamentally, it's like, as good as Greg is, it seems fundamentally not to suit the way that they play, especially without Finn Russell there. That everything was slower, and their backline is set up in such a way that they can attack fractured lines, but the fracturing of the line that's supposed to be created by the quick ball, none of that's really coming. And it's
an argument.
Their attack has slowed down. It has slowed down considerably, even with Finn.
Well, France were quicker than them at the weekend.
100%.
So they're not even the fastest team on the pitch, let alone the world. That's a good point. It's an interesting point. You'd still have him on the bench then, similar to the point you were making about Lopez, to have him come on. I would still be firmly in the camp of just not picking Ali Price, and I would actually
getting George Horne in there.
Yeah, George Horne. It looks like a great little option. He just needs exposure because the World Cup's coming and they need to decide these things. But he seems to be out of the pecking order. But like, Ali Price offers nothing to this team at all. He comes off the bench and you think
scored a try.
He did score a try from a little trail run that I think George Horne would have been there to score either. But he also cost a try in terms of being like, you think people think he's a quick scrum half, but he's so slow in so many things he does, like getting back to that defensive ruck for the very end for the try that was another try that wasn't, where the ball came back over the line, because he basically took around like 6 seconds to get to the ruck and then there was a pod set up that was so telegraphed that it got popped to, and then they ended up placing it behind their own line, had to touch it down, and the try came from that ensuing scrum. And that, like, the fault for that falls entirely on the scrumming. Like, you have to be there to marshal your troops out, and there was no way for them to get out. They were boxed in, and France just forced them back, and then got their bonus point try eventually off that. And it's just like, that's not quick play. No. that's the opposite of it. And what is he there to bring other than that? And he tends to make a fair few mistakes that I really don't rate. George Horne is an exciting player. If you want to play that fast and loose quick game, I'd be advocating getting him in. Having Greg there to kind of either come on to see a game out, which I'd say he'd be good for, or come in if that's not working, which there's obviously scope for that. If you're going to try and play that quickly, could be error strewn as well. So there's always an option of just changing things up with a mature guy like Greg from the bench.
100%.
It's a good argument.
I think sense. I agree with that. And Finn's going to be back, but in the World Cup, they've got, they're going to play probably two of. Definitely Ireland, and then one of New Zealand and South Africa. That's difficult for any team if they continue to play as they are, which is basically, they're playing a decent game. There's some attacking enterprise in there. A lot of it's basically just the Finn Russell show and what Finn can produce. But
true,
if they play the way that they're playing now, at the pace that they're playing now, they haven't a hope or a prayer of getting a win in any of those games.
Yes, it's probably true.
And so what they need to up that tempo, and they need to take more risks and really embrace that old school Glasgow enterprise. Flash it wide. Then in the tight, but like mixing it up, making on the spot calls all the time, being ferocious in the offensive breakdown. Anybody on the pitch who's near to the ruck because the ball is coming back and we're going again, and having that be the crack. Fast tempo, shock teams with us, and it nearly did for the All Blacks back in 2017. I mean, they were that close not that long ago, and now they seem actually a ways off.
They do.
So
they're still not as physical, despite their pack being able to match up. They're still lacking sometimes. So when games get a little slow and a little tight, they're an immediate disadvantage. And if they're a bit disjointed as they were against Ireland, say, which is probably partly due to Ireland putting them that way through phase pressure and them not being as switched on, as well as losing a fulcrum like Stewie Hogg, it was bound to fracture them a little bit mid game. But when it isn't clicking for them, they're revealed as like not only as not as quick as they should be for that style of game, but also when they play closer to the pace of the rest of the Six Nations, they just look like a very impatient team who like kick the ball away a lot.
Totally. And because they just want to make a play. Finn gets the ball and he's like itching to make something happen, and there's the picture that's presented to him isn't really presenting anything. And he's just, and then that's when they end up softly giving the ball away. But one of the things I will say is, like, for all of that softness, like at the weekend, that's the point that I think I would that I was almost trying to say when it comes to positives, is that I didn't see that softness. I saw a game where both sides, both forward packs and in general play, in terms of the physicality, they were pretty much cancelling each other out. It wasn't a case of Scotland missing tackles and falling off the place, but it was a case of France making offensive plays and Scotland then not in response. And it ended up being the margin that it was. But I could have pictured in years gone by, if Scotland had put in that defensive shift, maybe France would have got 27, but maybe Scotland would have got 28, or maybe they would have gone the other way, they could have got 25. But they didn't, they weren't able to get anything off. And granted, no Finn, no Hogg, but there's probably little nuggets of things just not quite being right, especially with what they're doing with the ball, which is so unlike this team.
It's true. It's not what we associate with them at all, but it's like a few key men gone, a few of the men they used to rely on to do that, not firing. Greg, another year older.
Was Vern Cotter forced out too early?
It's possible, I
don't dislike Gregor Townsend at all.
I don't either, but it's quite a rapid progression that he's made in the coaching world. And when you look at other kind of old former player coaches kind of coming through,
taking it
slower than all that, and you can see countless examples. Well, obviously we have Ronan O'Gara now going plying his trade in the Crusaders.
That said, have you heard the rumours around him that are leaking in the New Zealand Herald at the moment?
No.
Well, they were saying that, and this is pure speculation based on media, whatever, but there's this rumour that the All Blacks job is going to be given to Scott Robertson, and that perhaps maybe Rog could either get the Crusaders gig or
join him in the All Blacks camp. It's interesting stuff. Bit of an aside, but
for Scott Robertson, that's an example not of what you're talking about. Like that's a guy who's just gone.
Well, he's not shooting
top.
up, but through only constant and like just unabating excellence.
Yes.
But even when you look then within that same conference, the Blues had Tana Umaga head coach was
That's
probably
right.
a year too soon.
And
now they've demoted back down.
Yeah.
So you just don't know like when it's that recent. But like that being said, I do like Gregor Townsend. I do like what he's trying to do. I just like. It's not working. It's not working, and then all the talk after the game is always about how proud he is of the boys, even in kind of tame defeats, and the fact that there's still no away win in the Six Nations, barring Italy, is not good. And this French team, albeit vastly improved, are still like that's the first time they played together, and it's like as much as that. It's probably true of Scotland as well. That particular combination was very alien look to this Scotland team, and it was very disjointed as such. But like. To be that abject against a team that has been as poor as they have, that should have been their main target, especially because they have to go to Twickenham as well. That should have been what they were targeting for this year, and with that being the case, injuries or no, that's just not really good enough. And that's probably where some of the kind of more like loud criticism, I guess, has come from, that I don't necessarily agree with fully. Like you're saying, I think there were positives, but it's just like
because there's foundational stuff that's going okay. It's just that big picture stuff and that attack on which they base themselves, which I think they can get right. And then if they do get that right, they'll actually have the foundational stuff which is almost keeping them afloat at the moment to build on. That's very much
Edinburgh's improvement is definitely an improvement for them, because that was always like, even in those great times, like that great New Zealand defeat was still a defeat, and like they were still losing more games than they were winning, that even in those years. So,
but not at Murrayfield, to be fair.
Not at Murrayfield, to be fair.
And that's the other thing that's like. Now they've lost, and pretty tamely in both cases now in the last few months. Now they've lost 2 games. South Africa and Ireland both did for them in Murrayfield, which wasn't happening a year ago, you know.
Yeah, so that's marked disimprovement, and you can cite injuries or not, but that's like something else is probably amiss.
Totally, and they're just not attacking as crisply or as sharply or with nearly as much pace as they were.
True.
And they need to get that back. That said, on the positive note, because I did think it was a ballerific game, I really did enjoy it, and I'm happy to see France playing and looking like Toulouse, and those young Toulouse lads who beat Leinster earlier on in the year, those are the boys to back.
Put your faith in them.
100%.
Why wouldn't you? It seems bonkers to me, and that includes Couton, who you keep calling for because he keeps making classy plays in top couture despite being snubbed by the national side, but he's an excellent 13. They have an embarrassment of riches, but they just do need some cohesion if it's going to be this chop and change. Some little fluid thing. So in the backline there, you had Dupont, Entamac, Ramos and Huget and Medard on the bench. So it was like a lot of Toulouse men there who all knew how to use the ball, because that's what they've been doing all season.
They actually they don't have nearly as much concern at all with their pack. I actually think their pack can step up. It's just like on the hard days they're going to need a 7 to start with, and then you need in the finding of the 7 you fix the Van Mahina problem because you move Vittoria from the 7.
I'm not forgetting Vittoria out of there, because I think Vittoria's having a great run of form over the last few games. It's just he's not a 7. He actually looks a lot like Peter O'Mahony sometimes playing from 6, because he's good in the line out, good for a read and a steal, but also kind of marauding around the park. It's not that he's a turnover man, but he's like, he does a lot of jobs, multi-jobbing all around. And it's like you wouldn't like a specialist 7 next to him. If you're putting him in the rows, you're much fitter than him and Lambie, and then someone else on the bench who's not Van Mahina. Just get him out of there. I can't stand looking at him. Like, he's not just the intercept, but it's just the laziness of it. Like, the 4 tackles from a few weeks ago was pretty revolutionary in my thinking about the man as well, because I was just looking at it going like, but how? He was on for so long and he's such a big man. That's 4 tackles every quarter, or one tackle every 20 minutes. What is he doing there? And like, for all that, when you look at the highlights or something, he's at fault for one of the tries, and it's at least one of the tries, because he was at fault for one of the weekend as well. It's just he doesn't do enough. He needs to get out. I don't, because they do have ample replacements.
I don't disagree, and for sure it's all there for France. I mean, the question is, there's still a big hanging question mark, which is, you know, every game over the last 3 years that wasn't this game that just happened now, which was like, you know, everything has been chopping and changing, and he's been throwing shit at a wall, and this seems like it could stick.
Hopefully,
but hopefully he will, stick with it for a little bit.
Because there've been little false dawns before,
100%.
Like what we were.
The defense last year, they had they beat
defense.
England, and they had a great defense, and that their identity was this big physical team. There was no sense of the Toulouse that's in there now.
Yeah.
And then they just
couldn't use the ball. That was their problem. Was just they couldn't use the ball to save their lives. But they could cling in, and then in a breaking moment, someone like Teddy Thomas could steal the game for them. And then in summer they got rid of him. Yeah, they completely got rid of the coach, defensive coach, got a new coach in, who did implement a new attacking shape, which also looked good. They actually suddenly looked competent with ball in hand. We're flooding wide channels with centres and doing interesting, innovative things like that, because they wanted to pick Fico on the wing, which they still. But good attacking shape, and then just the defence couldn't muster anything, and we're shipping a ball load of tries.
That's it. It wasn't the All Blacks, but
it was the All Blacks,
were
but
not
it was
the same
just
team.
Nothing about it was the same. And then they got rid of the attack coach.
Yeah, and then in the autumn there was nuggets of positivity again, but never any consistency in selection. And then obviously that result against
Fiji.
And then they've come into this championship and performed as they've performed, and that's the thing, is that there's no consistency from the top, so it's hard to say with any. It's hard to be convinced.
Or committal
that this is going to go one way or the other. But there's definitely potential
much
in there.
More positive from France.
And this a warning sign. Like if you're Argentina or England and
or Ireland next week.
Well, that too. But if you're Argentina or England, you can't sleep on them.
Yeah,
can't sleep on them. They can play the game. 100%. They can play the game.
Yeah, their catch pass is still great.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please like down below and subscribe for more videos. And please enter the comments section to join our conversation. Thanks.